Bridges was just 6 years old, she took a walk every day to school, where it was a lot harder because people did not want her to be there. Not only did they not want her to be there, they threw things at her, they spit at her because she was black, because she wasn't white. And the people in that school didn't want to send their white children to a school where somebody black was going. And Ruby had the courage and determination to go. And not only to go, but to go with confidence and to go with courage. And even more, she had the ability, the awareness, and the heart space to forgive the very people that were spitting at her, shunning her, and trying to keep her away. She's a hero. And she now has the Ruby Bridges Foundation, where she encourages people, even little people like kids, to make change, to listen to each other. So on this day of dialogue, I challenge you to go up to somebody that maybe you don't know so well and ask them about their story and listen. And if they say to you that they've been teased or kept out of something, make change. Stand up for them. Have courage, just like Ruby. Today we're lucky enough to hear from a few people, and one of the people that was right on board with us taking this walk today is our very own beloved principal, Mrs. Page.
So I'm not only the principal of Orchard School, I'm also the chair of our DEI committee, and DEI stands for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And as a white woman, it's really my honor to be able to lead this committee and to help our school, actually both schools, because it's for River and for Orchard, to help our schools be able to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion within our schools. So it's just like what Ms. Oy said, if you see something, help out, speak up. So when we have our meetings, each meeting we start with an opening verse. And I love this verse because it speaks to being able to see yourself within the school. So I'm going to start with this verse. A healing social life is found when, in the mirror of each human soul, the whole community finds its reflection. And when, in the community, the virtue of each one is living. And that's what we're striving for in DEI, that we all see ourselves in the community and we all celebrate our differences. We listen, we discuss. With that, I'm going to pass it back to Mrs. Oy. Thank you for for really spearheading this. Probably not the word I should say. Thank you for organizing this. See, we're learning. That's one of the things we learn. Things we should say, things we shouldn't say. So thank you for organizing this. It's so invigorating and inspirational to see all of these students and parents and faculty here.
Thank you, Mrs. Page. I am so thrilled to be part of a community like Golden Valley Orchard School that cares enough to do this together in unity. And leading our organization is Dr. Caleb Buckley, and I'd like to ask him to come up and say a few words.
Good morning, Orchard School. Give yourself a round of applause for doing that walk so quickly and eagerly and sitting so quietly right now for speeches. I have a few things to say about Ruby Bridges and to mark the occasion here today. One is that we forget how young Ruby Bridges was at the time and how it was not that long ago. I was able actually to talk to my parents recently who were older than Ruby Bridges at the time and were able to watch all of this happening on television as young people and try to make sense of it back then. So this is a woman who is still under 70 years old today, and as Ms. Oy mentioned, is running a foundation and doing important work. And one of the quotes I like that Ruby Bridges gave from her foundation is that the whole idea at the time that there was hate in the world and that people did not get along and did not respect each other, she said these are all adult behaviors that were learned, and they were not things that came naturally to children. And what I want to reflect on with that is the fact that we as adults are always put in the position of leaders. Ms. Oy mentioned the school board hires me and I'm the leader of the organization, of the Golden Valley organization. You're in your classroom, and so you might have your class teacher who is the leader of your environment. You go out to recess and you have our instructional assistants are the leaders of the recess time if you have an issue. But in the example of Ruby Bridges, she is the one who was the leader. And the leadership came from one of the smallest among us, from just a little girl on her way to school. And sometimes when we have disagreements and we don't understand each other, you don't need adults to show leadership and to explain to you what you have to do. You can listen to your own heart as a young person and think about how you can provide leadership. And so we as adults, when we meet as a faculty, when we meet as a group, we're always looking at you and we're trying to figure out how do we need to change how we behave by understanding what comes so naturally to you. And that is love and acceptance and understanding, that somehow as adults, we've sort of educated ourselves out of that. And so it's a great privilege to work at a school and to see in the kindergarten how it's nurtured, how you come up through first grade with that reverence for your classroom, for each other, and even through 8th grade, holding the banner and being the example and setting the pace for the whole school. So thank you very much for coming out and commemorating this day. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Oy, and I'm just honored to be a part of it. Thank you.
Now, as Mrs. Page said, it's an honor as somebody who is white, who hasn't had to face the same threats and horrors and difficulties. But it's always nice to hear from somebody who has had to face those things. It's different, and that's why it's important to listen. So I would like to welcome one of our own parents, who I'm very thankful to today because he's doing double duty, and he's also being our photographer. A parent in my class, and has also been a member of that same DEI committee, Mr. Ray LaPointe.
Thank you, Mrs. Oy. I'm gonna hold this a little bit further away from me. Can everybody hear me? Yeah. Perfect, great. It is wonderful to see so many people here today. I want to share some comparisons and some differences between myself and Ruby Bridges. I grew up in a small Central Texas town. The black people lived on the black side of town. The white people lived on the white side of town, and the Mexicans lived on the edge of the black side of town, and this is the town that we grew up in, and this is how it was. The interesting thing about that particular town is that we all went to school together. We sat on the bus together, we sat by each other in class, we rode the same buses to events, we stood in music class and we sang "This Land Is Your Land," "Deep in the Heart of Texas," and "America the Beautiful." We sang all these songs together. During my childhood, from kindergarten all the way up until I graduated high school, I can remember maybe 2 issues that I experienced that were really race-related. I remember one being in 7th grade, and I was walking home from one of our local swimming pools. Where I grew up, we had 3 public pools. One was on the black side of town, one was on the middle class white side of town, and one was on the rich white side of town. I was walking home from the one on the middle class white side of town, and there was a little, probably 2, maybe 3-year-old kid standing outside in a diaper and cowboy boots, because that's how just about all the toddlers in Texas dressed at the time. And this little kid's out in the yard by himself, and I'm walking by the sidewalk. Extremely vivid memory of I was walking, he was on my left, right by a tree, dirty Pampers, cowboy boot, playing something, little bandana around his neck, and he called me a name. And he called me a name that pretty much stems from years of hate, years of fear, and he called me a name. He said a particular word that most people would never use. But for this 2-year-old, maybe 3-year-old to even know this word, it really means that this word was used in their household on a regular basis. And that's why he called me that name. It's purely based on the color of my skin. The second incident that I experienced was when I was in high school. I played on the basketball team. I grew really fast when I was a kid. I was 6 foot tall in 6th grade, and I was in high school. I was about 6 foot tall. There was this kid named Freddie Johnson. He was also about 6 foot tall. The difference between Freddie Johnson and myself is that Freddie Johnson grew up in the projects. Projects was a low-income housing area that was a red brick apartment complex. It was right across the street from where we went to elementary school, and a lot of people that grew up in this particular complex, this area called the projects, had to prove to other people that they were tough. This is what they felt they needed to do to survive. And I did not grow up that way. I grew up in a household where my parents valued education. They valued being kind. They valued taking care of each other and helping other people in our community. So one day, had a basketball game. Right afterwards, we're in the locker room, and Freddie Johnson decides that he wants to pick on this other kid on our basketball team. This other kid's name was Brent. Brent was probably about 5'6", skinny little kid, and he was white. Freddie was black, and I was black. And this was one of those situations where Freddie wanted to be a bully to Brent. He took something that Brent had and pretty much told Brent, if you want to get this back, you have to take it from me, which meant he was trying to engage Brent in a fight. There's a huge size difference between a 6 foot person and a 5'6" person, especially when we're talking about kids in high school. This was a very not right thing that was going on. So I stood up and I pretty much got myself between Freddie and Brent to protect Brent from being attacked by Freddie. Freddie asked me, was I really going to side against him, someone who was black, to protect Brent, someone who was white, someone who was not like me. For whatever reason, Freddie thought that I actually had a choice in this decision. I did not have a choice in the decision. The decision was already made. I was doing the right thing. I decided to protect Brent. We moved on. Everything was fine. There was no fight. Brent got his stuff back, and Freddie realized that bullies don't always win. That's just the way that it goes sometimes. My parents taught me 3 things that I value today. How important education is, how to respect women, and how to stick up for people who are being bullied. And that's what I did that day to defend Brent. Ruby Bridges did not pick a fight with the elementary school in Louisiana. She did not decide to attend an all-white school. The problem with Louisiana back in the 1950s and the 1960s was that white schools did not want Ruby or any other black child to attend their school. They felt that black children and black people were inferior and less educated. In fact, the school actually put together an entrance exam to test these black kids that the United States had decided could go to all-white schools to see if they were educated enough to actually attend and excel at the same school that the all-white children attended. Ruby passed her exams, and she was instructed by the government to go and attend this school. The local citizens hated and feared that they were going to have change. People in general just do not like change. And Ruby and her mother had to be escorted to this school by federal marshals, 4 federal marshals for their protections. These are the highest level of police officers for the government, and their jobs were to make sure that this mom and this child could safely walk in and out of this school without being attacked, without being hurt, without being harmed, and maybe even worse, by these citizens, these moms, these kids, these dads of the environment. There was so much hate in this town that Ruby's dad lost her job because people did not want things to change. And no one in New Orleans, this particular town in Louisiana, did not want any black children attending their schools. The saddest part about Ruby's story is that not only did her family have to go through this, and that the families of the town did not want this child or any other child attending their schools, the teachers of this school did not want to actually teach Ruby. There was only one teacher in this entire school that decided that she would actually help Ruby and be Ruby's teacher. And Ruby spent her first year at this school with no one to talk to but this one particular teacher. Could you imagine being called names every time you actually try to go to school? Could you imagine no one in your school liking you at all? Could you imagine no one wanting to be your friend? No one wanting to sit by you at lunchtime? Could you imagine going to the grocery stores and people not wanting to actually give you food? All because of the color of your skin. This is what Ruby and her parents experienced in Louisiana. In 2023, we no longer have legal segregation. However, segregation still exists. People don't like change. They didn't like it back in the 1960s, and they don't like it now. People are afraid to think that someone who doesn't look like them could actually be just like them. Mrs. Zoe does not look like Mrs. Page. Mrs. Page does not look like Mrs. Claudia. Nonetheless, these are each very kind people, and each of them care about the children here at Golden Valley. Education is the one thing that brings us all here together today. We want the children of Golden Valley to receive a wonderful education and to go forward into this world to become wonderful people. We have a DEI committee at Golden Valley that spends countless volunteer hours, not to create a white-only school or a black-only school, but to create an environment in which all students feel safe and enjoy attending. I want to say thank you to everyone who has treated me and my 2 little boys with kindness, inclusiveness at this school. I love when I do really good and I get to like one of the last words and I mess it up. I hope that my children and every other child at Golden Valley grows up to be wonderful people, and if they see an opportunity to stick up for a bully, if they see an opportunity to make change, if they see something that is not right, that they do everything in their powers to make it right. And I hope that everyone grows, all the students at the school grow to extend kindness and inclusivity to everyone that they meet. Thank you so much for your time.